I'm sitting at a beautifully decorated Christmas table, surrounded by my family. The tree is glowing in the corner, stockings hang over the fireplace, and soft carols are playing in the background. The smell of cinnamon and pine hangs in the air, and a fire crackles gently, warming the room. Outside, snow falls quietly against the window pane, the kind of perfect snowfall you only see in movies. Everyone's silent, though, not because of the holiday magic, but because we're all staring at the baby monitor on the screen. And what we're watching feels like a nightmare I can't wake up from. For a few unbearable seconds, I just sit there, frozen. The screen flickers softly, showing the dim nursery upstairs. The monitor was meant to capture the sweetness of my wife, putting our relative's baby to bed. Her soft cooing, her warmth. Instead, it's capturing the sound of her kissing someone. The unmistakable rustle of clothes. The voice of my cousin whispering things I won't repeat. I can't breathe. The table, the tree, the lights. It all feels wrong now, taunting me with its cheerfulness. I look around at my family, their faces pale and uncomfortable. My sister tries to sip her wine, avoiding my gaze. My uncle mutters something under his breath and stares at his plate. No one knows what to say. How did I get here? How did Christmas, the holiday I loved most, turn into this? Hi, my name's James. My wife's name is Eleanor. We've been married for a year. And yes, like anyone else, we've had our problems, but nothing major. We had plans, a home we wanted to build, kids we dreamed of having. I truly believed I was doing everything I could for this relationship, just like she was. To me, we were happy. And if you told me a week ago that my wife could ever betray me, on Christmas Day no less, I would have laughed in your face. I think back to the little things, moments I brushed off, red flags I didn't see for what they were, like that stupid argument over a TikTok trend. It was a trend where husbands lift their wives, spinning them gently in their arms. She wanted to record it for fun, but when I couldn't hold her quite the way she wanted, she'd laughed. Your cousin could have done it better. I remember shrugging it off at the time. I'm a confident man. I don't let petty comments get to me. Still, I can't lie. That one stung. Not because I believed she meant anything by it, but because something about it lingered in the back of my mind. I ignored it. I trusted her. I thought, why would I ever doubt the woman I love? Now here I am, watching my wife and my cousin through a monitor on Christmas. The soft glow of the Christmas lights seems harsher now, like they're mocking me for being so blind. Christmas had started perfectly. We'd been invited to celebrate at my aunt and uncle's house, a yearly family tradition. Their place is the kind of cozy you see in magazines. The wreaths on the windows, the smell of spiced cider on the stove, and the dining room glowing with golden light. My wife looked stunning as always when we walked in. She hugged everyone warmly, her smile bright enough to light up the room. And then my cousin walked in. My cousin, yes, that cousin, has always been the guy who gets noticed. Tall, cocky, good-looking. Women fall for him without even trying. I've known him my whole life, and I've learned not to let him get under my skin. I won't deny it. I never liked the guy, but I could tolerate him. He was family, after all. I hadn't seen him in months. When he walked through the door, loud and confident as ever, I felt nothing but mild annoyance. My wife turned, saw him, and smiled. I didn't think twice about it. Why would I? I trusted her. We all sat down for Christmas dinner, and for a while, everything felt perfect. The table was beautiful. Red linens, candles flickering softly, and plates piled high with turkey, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce. My uncle poured glasses of wine, and my aunt brought out her famous apple pie. I looked at my wife, who was laughing with my sister, and I remember thinking how lucky I was. She was beautiful, warm, and kind, the kind of woman who lights up a room. She always loved kids, too. The baby belonged to my cousin's sister. My wife had spent most of the evening playing with her, holding her gently and whispering sweet words in her ear. It was one of those moments that made me think about our future, how incredible she would be as a mother someday. At one point, the baby's mom, my cousin's sister, stood up and said it was time to put the little one to bed. My wife didn't hesitate. "Let me do it," she said, her smile soft. "I love her so much. You all stay here and enjoy yourselves." She took the baby upstairs, and my cousin excused himself. "Bathroom," he said casually, pushing back his chair. He walked off without another word. We turned on the monitor to watch. It was supposed to be sweet, a moment of calm and innocence on a day filled with love and family. "You're a lucky man," my uncle said, patting me on the back. "She's a good one." I smiled. I believed him. I didn't think much of my cousin leaving at the time. I didn't know that would be the last peaceful moment of Christmas. Because then the whispers started. If someone had told me that in 5 minutes, I'd hear my wife kissing another man through a baby monitor, I would have thought they were crazy. But that's the thing about betrayal, you never see it coming. And when it does hit, it doesn't just hurt. It ruins you. The baby monitor sits in the middle of the table, propped up against the salt shaker. At first, it feels like one of those wholesome Christmas moments, something that belongs in a Hallmark movie. On the screen, Eleanor is gently rocking the baby to sleep, her voice soft and soothing. The nursery is dim, bathed in a soft glow from the nightlight shaped like a little star. The faint hum of the lullaby she's humming drifts through the monitor, calm and rhythmic. Around me, the room feels like the safest place in the world. My aunt refills glasses of wine. My sister leans back in her chair, talking about New Year's resolutions, and my uncle cuts into his second slice of pie. A laugh ripples across the table, warm, genuine, and for a moment, I let myself sink into it. Snow taps lightly against the frosted windows, and the fireplace crackles in the corner. The wreaths and garlands look perfect. The tree's golden lights flicker like stars. I remember thinking how lucky I felt to be here, to have this life. And then it happened. At first, it was faint. A whisper that was easy to ignore. Just a soft sound, barely more than static through the monitor. I didn't catch the words. No one did. We kept talking, letting it fade into the background. It was probably nothing. Just the monitor picking up some interference, I thought. But then it came again, clearer this time. "You look so beautiful today." The voice, low, deliberate, cuts through the quiet hum of the nursery like a blade. The table falls silent. Forks stop mid-air. I see my sister's head tilt slightly, her brows furrowing. My aunt freezes, her hand still gripping the wine bottle. Did someone say something?" My uncle mutters, his voice low and unsure. No one answers. The baby's mother glances nervously at the screen, her face paling. She tries to smile, to laugh it off. Maybe it's the monitor picking up something nearby? But even as she says it, we hear it again. This time, there's no mistaking it. I can't stop thinking about that night we spent together. I don't move. My breath catches in my chest, and for a moment, I can't feel my hands. The voice, the man's voice, is one I know too well. It's my cousin. A heavy silence wraps itself around the table, suffocating all the warmth that was here just minutes ago. I glance at my sister. Her face has gone pale, her mouth slightly open like she wants to say something but can't find the words. My uncle's grip tightens around his fork, and I hear the quiet scrape of it against the plate. My aunt looks down, suddenly fascinated by the tablecloth, as if ignoring it will make it stop. And then, like a slap to the face, it happens. Laughter. A low, flirtatious laugh that sends ice through my veins. It's Eleanor. The sound is soft, muffled, but it's her. It's undeniably her. And then the kiss. A sound I'll never forget for as long as I live. Soft, wet, like the sound of two people pulling apart just briefly before leaning in again. The baby's mother jumps up, fumbling to grab her phone. "I'll turn it off, sorry. This?" she stammers, her hands shaking as she swipes frantically at the screen. The monitor goes dark. But it doesn't matter. We all heard it. I sit there, staring at the blank screen, my heart pounding so loud I can hear it in my ears. My mind refuses to process what just happened, like it's stuck trying to rewrite the last few seconds. Can't be real. It has to be something else. I look around the table. No one says a word. My aunt avoids my gaze, staring hard at her wine glass. My uncle clears his throat, his expression torn between embarrassment and anger. My sister looks at me, wide-eyed, her face a mixture of disbelief and pity. I want someone, anyone, to say something, to tell me I'm imagining things, that there's some explanation no matter how ridiculous. But no one does, because they heard it too, because it's real, because it's happening. I grip the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turn white. I stare at the glowing Christmas tree in the corner of the room. The soft golden lights look cruel now, mocking me with their cheerfulness. Everything I thought I knew about today, about Eleanor, about my life, begins to crumble piece by piece. If someone had told me I'd spend Christmas listening to my wife and cousin whisper through a baby monitor, I would have thought they were insane. But there I was, sitting at a table full of people who didn't know what to do, hearing the sound of my marriage collapsing. The sound of that kiss was still ringing in my ears when it hit me. Eleanor, my wife, and my cousin. It wasn't static. It wasn't the monitor acting up. It was them. Something inside me snapped. My chair scraped violently against the hardwood floor as I stood, the sound slicing through the silence at the table. Heads turned to me, eyes wide with shock, but I didn't care. I didn't say a word. I didn't look at anyone. I moved. My body was ahead of my mind, driven by something primal, a raw, boiling rage. My footsteps echoed through the house as I stormed toward the hallway, toward the stairs, toward them. The garlands on the banister blurred as I passed. The twinkling lights lining the hallway flickered mockingly, like they knew this Christmas was a lie. All I could see was red. All I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time. The creak of each step was sharp, piercing, but I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. My fists were already clenched so tight I couldn't feel my fingers. The hallway upstairs was dark except for the faint golden glow spilling out from the baby's room. The door was cracked open, and I could hear them. Soft voices, whispered words I couldn't make out but didn't need to. My chest burned. I wasn't thinking anymore. There wasn't time for thinking. I shoved the door open so hard it slammed against the wall with a bang. The scene in front of me will be burned into my memory forever. There they were. Eleanor was leaning against the crib, her hands resting on its edge as she whispered something to him. And my cousin, that smug bastard, was standing far too close, his face inches from hers. Their heads snapped toward me at the same time. For a moment, time froze. The dim light from the nightlight caught Eleanor's face, her eyes wide, her mouth parting in shock as she stumbled back from him like she'd just been burned. She looked guilty. She looked afraid. My cousin, on the other hand, was still, his cocky mask cracking as he straightened, his hands lifting slightly, like he was caught doing something minor, something fixable. "James," Eleanor started. But it was too late. I didn't hear what she said. Couldn't. I crossed the room in 2 strides and went for my cousin. I don't even remember raising my fists. It just happened. My knuckles crashed into his jaw, and the sound of it was more satisfying than I'd ever admit. He stumbled back into the wall, knocking over a lamp that shattered on the floor. "James, stop!" Eleanor shrieked, her voice high and panicked. But I didn't stop. My cousin put up his hands, trying to shield himself, but it didn't matter. I grabbed him by the collar and shoved him against the wall. Hard. The garlands around the window rattled from the impact, little twinkle lights flickering off. "You think you're clever, don't you?" I spat through gritted teeth, my face inches from his. "You think you can take everything from me?" Again. He didn't answer, he couldn't. Blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth. He tried to stammer something, but it only made me angrier. Behind me, Eleanor screamed again. James, please, stop. I turned, and when I looked at her, something inside me shifted. Her face was pale, her hands trembling as she stood there, useless and pathetic. She looked at me like I was the villain me, as if I was the one ruining Christmas. Not her. That was when I realized something. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't crying because she loved me, or because she felt guilty. She was crying because she'd been caught. I let go of my cousin, letting him slump against the wall like the worthless coward he was. I turned to Eleanor, my voice low and sharp. How could you? I said, my words cutting through the air like a knife. On Christmas? Here. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. She looked away, her shoulders trembling. Look at me. My voice shook with anger. She flinched, finally meeting my eyes. How long, Eleanor? How long has this been going on? Her lip quivered. She shook her head, her voice breaking. James, it's not what you think. Not what I think? I nearly laughed, the bitterness of it catching in my throat. I just heard you. We all heard you. So don't stand there and insult me with your lies. She took a step toward me, her hand reaching out like she was trying to calm me down. Please, just let me explain. But I stepped back. Don't touch me, I said quietly. She froze. From behind me, my cousin groaned, dragging himself up from the floor, wiping at his bloody mouth with the back of his hand. You're overreacting, man, he muttered. It's not a big deal. The words, those stupid, arrogant words, were the final straw. I spun on him so fast he flinched. Not a big deal? I repeated, my voice a low growl. You betrayed me again. You think you're proud of yourself? Huh? Is this what you do to feel like a man? You take what's mine because you're too pathetic to build anything of your own. His expression shifted, the smugness replaced by something else. Something closer to fear. I turned back to Eleanor. She was still standing there, useless and silent, tears streaking her face. Do you love him? I demanded. She shook her head quickly, her words stumbling. No, James, no, it's not like that. Then why? My voice cracked. Why? I stood there, breathing hard, my chest rising and falling as I stared at her. The rage in me started to twist into something worse, something cold and heavy. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't even look at the room around me, with its mocking Christmas lights and cheerful decorations. I walked to the door. As I stepped into the hallway, I turned back just once, looking at both of them. Eleanor still crying, my cousin slumped against the wall, silent. You two deserve each other, I said, my voice quiet but steady. And then I walked away. Asterisk. I didn't think, I didn't plan. I just acted. In that moment, the only thing I knew was that I had to get out of that room before I did something worse. Before I let them drag me down to their level. I don't regret hitting him. I don't regret a single word I said. Because some betrayals don't deserve kindness. They don't deserve patience. Some betrayals deserve the truth. And the truth was I was done. Asterisk. I sat in the dark when I got home, the Christmas tree glowing faintly in the corner. It was perfect. Just a week ago, Eleanor and I decorated it together, laughing, drinking wine. Now it mocked me. Every light a reminder of the lie I'd been living. This wasn't the first time. Years ago, when I was 21, Thomas stole my first love, Sarah. He'd crash at my place, flashing that same smug grin, charming her right out of my arms. I found them together in his car, no guilt, no apology. He laughed. Women don't want boring, James. They want excitement. Back then, I let him walk away. I see him for what he is now. Thomas has nothing, no accomplishments, no real life of his own. He takes because he envies me. Cheap affairs and stolen women are all he has to hold on to. But not this time. I stared at the blinking lights on the tree, my fists tightening. He thinks he's won again, but he hasn't. This time it ends. I won't let him walk away unscathed. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the heater. I sat there in the glow of the Christmas tree, staring at nothing. Somewhere out there, Eleanor was probably crying or hiding, but I didn't know where she was. And I didn't care. She didn't matter anymore. Her betrayal had stripped away everything I thought I felt for her. The woman I married didn't exist. Not really. What remained was just a stranger who made her choice. No, my focus was on him. Thomas. I wouldn't let this slide. Not like before. I wasn't 21 anymore, standing stunned and helpless while Thomas laughed and walked away. This time I'd be deliberate, precise. Violence wasn't what I wanted. I wanted him to feel exposed, humiliated. I started digging. It didn't take long to find the cracks in his carefully built facade. Thomas was as reckless as he was arrogant. He had debts, mountains of them. Failed business ventures, unpaid loans, promises he couldn't keep. It was all there, hidden beneath his cocky grin. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how pathetic he really was. He'd spent his life pretending to win, masking his failures with cheap victories and stolen moments. But now I was holding the strings. As I sat back, the faint smell of pine and cinnamon lingered in the air. A mocking reminder that Christmas wasn't over yet. I looked at the glowing tree one last time, my jaw tightening. He ruined my Christmas. Now, I'm going to ruin his life. New Year's Eve arrived and I set the trap. The party was held at one of Thomas's businesses, or so he thought. I'd quietly bought the bar out weeks earlier, knowing it was buried in debt. It was decorated beautifully. Shimmering lights, champagne on ice, and a massive golden Christmas tree in the center. Thomas showed up late, grinning, working the room like he owned it. He kissed his girlfriend's cheek, bragged to friends, laughed too loudly, arrogant, as always. I let him enjoy it, for a little while. When the moment was right, I stepped forward with a microphone. Thank you all for coming tonight. Some of you may not know. This bar isn't Thomas's anymore. He lost it. The room fell silent. Thomas's smile dropped. What the hell are you talking about, James? He barked. But I didn't stop. Thomas has a habit of pretending. Pretending he's successful. Pretending he's loyal. Pretending he's a man you can trust. I held up a folder, evidence of his debts, his failures, and his cheating. I handed it to his girlfriend first. She turned and walked out without a word. His face went pale. Friends murmured and pulled away, leaving him standing there, alone under the golden lights. As I stepped into the cold night, I looked back through the window. Thomas was still there, humiliated, his life unraveling. He ruined my Christmas. I ruined his life. Fair trade, if you ask me. I didn't stay to watch him crumble. I walked out of that party with my head high, the cold night air hitting me like a wake-up call. Snow crunched under my boots as I moved toward my car, and for the first time in weeks, my mind was clear. I didn't need to see him fall to know that he would. Thomas had built his life like a house of cards, balancing debts, lies, and empty charm. I'd simply pulled out the one card he didn't think anyone would touch. The truth. And now it was all collapsing around him. It didn't take long for the calls to start coming in. Friends who'd been at the party, family members who heard what happened, they all wanted to talk about Thomas. His girlfriend had stormed out, folder in hand, her face blank but her silence loud enough to echo through the room. By the time I left, she was already on the phone with her father, probably explaining why his golden boy future son-in-law was nothing but a fraud. I didn't ask for updates. I didn't have to. The next morning, I got a text from my sister. You won't believe this. Thomas's girlfriend dumped him. Her family's pulling out of that deal he bragged about. He's ruined. I didn't reply. I just stared at the message for a long time, letting it sink in. Not satisfaction exactly, more like closure. By the end of the week, Thomas was a ghost of the man he pretended to be. His friends stopped answering his calls, the ones who used to laugh at his jokes and follow him around like shadows. Word spread quickly about the debts he couldn't pay, the businesses he'd fumbled, and the lies he'd told. I heard from mutual friends that he tried to fix things, tried to call in favors, convince people it was all just a misunderstanding, but no one bought it. The charm that had carried him so far was finally worthless. I'll admit, there was a part of me, small and quiet, that wanted to feel sorry for him. We'd grown up together, after all. I remembered being kids, running through the snow at our grandparents' house during Christmas, throwing snowballs and stealing extra cookies from the kitchen. There was a time when Thomas was just my cousin, nothing more, nothing less. But that version of him was gone, and the man he'd become deserved exactly what he got. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Thomas. His voice cracked when he spoke. "James, why did you do this?" There it was. Not arrogance, not smugness, just the pathetic whimper of a man who'd lost everything. For a moment I considered hanging up. But then I answered, my voice calm, steady. "Because you earned it. James, please. We're family." "No." I cut him off, my tone sharper than I intended. "Family doesn't do what you did. Family doesn't take just because they can." There was silence on the other end. I could almost hear him breathing, searching for something to say. Some excuse, some plea that might make this all go away. But he found nothing. "You've spent your whole life pretending to win," I said finally, my voice quiet but firm. "But here's the truth, Thomas. You never had anything real to begin with." I hung up. I didn't need to say anything more. I didn't need to hear anything more. Thomas had always been empty. Just a shell of charm and ego hiding the nothingness inside. And now, with the truth out, the world could see him for what he really was. He'd taken so much from me over the years, but he would never take anything again. New Year's Eve came, quiet and still. I didn't go to any parties. I didn't feel like celebrating with anyone else. Instead, I stayed home. The Christmas tree was still up in the corner of the living room. I thought about taking it down, but I didn't. It wasn't the tree's fault that everything had gone wrong. It was still beautiful, still glowing softly with golden lights. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat on the couch, staring at the tree as the clock ticked toward midnight. The room was warm, the air thick with the faint scent of pine. Outside, snow fell in slow, lazy flurries under the glow of the streetlights. I thought about Eleanor wherever she was. I hadn't heard from her since Christmas. Maybe she was still with Thomas. Maybe she wasn't. I didn't care. The truth was, Eleanor didn't matter anymore. I'd spent so much time trying to understand why she did what she did, why any of them had done what they did. But now I realized it didn't matter. Eleanor was gone. Thomas was gone. And I was still here. I thought about everything I'd been through, the lies, the betrayal, the rage, and I felt something shift inside me. The pain wasn't gone, but it felt smaller now. Manageable. Like a weight I could finally carry without sinking under it. Thomas thought he'd ruin me. He thought taking Eleanor would break me, but all he did was show me the truth. I was better off without either of them. That's the thing about betrayal. It burns like hell when it happens, but once the fire dies, you realize you're still standing. And sometimes standing is enough. Midnight struck. The clock let out a quiet chime, and somewhere down the street, fireworks began to crackle. I raised my glass to no one in particular, watching the lights dance across the dark sky outside. "If there's one thing this Christmas taught me," I said softly to the empty room, "it's that some people will try to steal your joy, not because they need it, but because they can't stand seeing you happy." I took a slow sip of whiskey, letting the warmth spread through me. But they can't take what you don't let them. Thomas thought he could take my pride, my happiness, my future. He thought he could drag me down to his level. But he didn't. I'm still here. I'm still standing. And as I sat there, watching the snow fall through the window, I felt it, peace. Real quiet peace. Some losses aren't losses at all. They're lessons in disguise. I don't know what next year will bring. Maybe I'll rebuild. Maybe I'll meet someone who knows what loyalty really looks like. Or maybe I'll just keep going one step at a time. All I know is this. I'm stronger than I was before. I didn't let them break me, and that's enough.